Today it's Canada Day, and what better way to celebrate Canada Day than by tearing down a video game console that's not only the only game console to have ever come from Canada, but is also so obscure that I couldn't find any other teardown videos of it on YouTube. So here you go.
The gamewave went on quite a strange journey during its life. Originally envisioned as a pseudo-successor to consoles such as the 3DO, it went through an identity crisis so odd that the only licensed title for the system ended up being a VeggieTales themed Mario Party clone, and years after it was taken off the market, the CEO of the company behind the gamewave, Zappit Games, was sent to prison Ontario on several felony charges. When all was said and done, the gamewave had sold so poorly that, if my comment section is anything to go off of, most Canadians didn't even know that this thing existed. This, of course, is just a super quick summary, and it's just scratching the surface of the weird and wonderfully horrible story of the gamewave, which I've covered in depth twice, both on here as part of the Art of Failure documentary series, and over on Top Hat Gaming Man's channel as a piece of guest content. I have never done a teardown of a console on this channel before, but if you enjoy this video, I may do more or even do some console restoration videos. After all, I actually already do console and computer restorations in my free time, so definitely let me know in the comment section below. Anyways, today's video is going to be in two parts. First, I am going to take apart the gamewave console itself and go through what makes it tick. I'll explain the technical bits as best I can, talk about the weird quirks that this system has, and even give you the pleasure of seeing this console see the light of day for perhaps the first time ever, as I actually bought this system as new old stock, which sounds impressive until you realize that, with shipping and everything, this all cost me less than $30, and that was with a few games. The second part of this video will then involve me showing off all 6 of the games that I own. While I unfortunately don't own the VeggieTales game, I do own most of the other quote-unquote heavy hitters for this console, if you even call them that. And I should mention, as there are only 13 gamewave games ever released, we'll be seeing roughly half of the entire library here today.
Now, just one thing of note before we start. The footage you're about to see was recorded before the Art of Failure episode about the gamewave. In fact, you may know that some of it was actually used for that documentary. With that said, if any of you do know a lot about the gamewave and I miss anything during this video, please let me know. And maybe consult that video first, because if I don't cover it here, it may be in there. But anyways, with that, let's get right into this thing.
This is the box for the gamewave family entertainment system, and really there's only one way to describe it. Massive. This box is an absolute behemoth, which is odd seeing how light it is. Of note on the box itself are 3 things. First off, this is the original gamewave package, as it comes with the game 4 Degrees to Arc of Trivia Volume 1. The only other gamewave package that was ever made came from shortly before it was discontinued, and that contained the VeggieTales game. Second, the box proudly advertised that 6 can play this console at once, even though it only comes with 4 controllers. Though new controllers can still be found at some online stores, such as the official VeggieTales store, for $25 Canadian each, which is a refreshing figure to see compared to the 100 CAD for a set of Switch Joy-Cons. The third thing of note is the advertising here of this system coming with AV composite cables and S-video cables. Composite and S-video are not stunning video output methods nowadays. In fact, they seem quite antiquated. The gamewave did not do component video or HDMI. To be fair though, it is a very sharp looking S-video, as you can see in this footage here, captured using my Blackmagic Intensity Extreme shuttle. Keep in mind, even in 2005, component video was fairly standard on consoles though, and was most likely just emitted here as a cost-cutting measure. The gamewave had originally retailed new for only $100 Canadian, but Zappit Games during development had targeted a price point of only $50, though that was just not possible. In many ways though, as we'll see, this system was built to a cost. Anyways, back to the box. As huge as it is, it's actually very easy to open. Gamewave boxes typically weren't sealed and were held shut just by a series of 4 easy to open tabs. Once in, the console controller case and 4 controllers are encased in some high quality film plastic surrounded by some hefty piece of styrofoam. In here, we can also find a warranty card, a black and white manual, and some AA batteries I think are well past their expiration date. Those can just go in the trash. The controllers are located inside the controller case, and honestly they feel more like TV remotes than actual game console controllers. The case itself though is fairly nice. The plastic here does feel fairly cheap, though it doesn't feel unsteady, and the clear cover on top here is a sure way to keep these controllers from collecting dust. Honestly, I do like this idea of a console coming with a controller case, especially as this one slots right next to the system itself, giving it its signature wave look. Going on to the controllers, they're really nothing special. The buttons here feel like something from my high school calculator, and the setup here feels like something straight out of the 1980s. There's 4 buttons on the top of the controller, A, B, C, and D, and below that is a squishy array of arrow buttons, and a number array right below that itself seems like something better fit for the Intellivision or ColecoVision, not a system that came out roughly a month before the Xbox 360. Best thing I can say about these controllers is that on 2 AA batteries, they'd last quite a while. And yes, they do feel fairly well built, at least well enough to be handled by kids. Now we get to the system itself. This is the gamewave console, also wrapped in plastic, with its built-in non-removable power cable, also encased in its own thing of plastic. This built-in power cable is another design choice that just reminds me of console from the 80s, not something from about a decade ago. But anyways, as for the actual build quality and whatnot, I actually really love the metallic plastics look and feel on it. It kind of reminds me of the Motorola Razr flip phones from back in the day. As for the look of it, I think the chrome wave it forms with the controller case is kind of cool, but on its own it looks like a fairly standard DVD player, which I guess makes sense as the gamewave can function as one of those and indeed was sometimes advertised as a DVD player.
Hey Mike, is that your DVD player?
No, that's the gamewave, but it also plays movies. You know, it was really easy to set up. Now, it plays all sorts of games, but what we're going to do is we're going to play a trivia game with multiple choice.
Turning it around to the back, we can see where the power cable comes out, the AV&S video ports, and an expansion port, of which nothing was ever done with. So before I opened this thing up, I decided I was going to power it on and test it out. But for a second, I thought it was broken, despite being new in box. I could just not get the disc tray to open, no matter what I did. And that's when I learned about one of the weirdest quirks of the gamewave. To get it to open the disc tray, you have to plug it into a TV, turn it on, let it boot up, and then you can insert a disc. Even weirder, unlike most disc-based consoles where they encourage you to turn off the system completely before changing discs, you're somewhat encouraged here to just pop out discs and change games at any time. Perhaps this is helped by none of the games here having to save any real data, but we'll get to those. So now let's finally actually open this system up. To get inside, we have to unscrew some screws on the back and on the bottom of the console. And there's a ton of them. Like, there has to be at least 20 screws in total, and that's just in the outer case. But also, most of these screws, save for these 2 little black ones here, are the same size, so that's nice. What we'll also notice here is that, though most of the outer shell of the console is made of plastic, the bottom of the system is actually made of metal, which I guess makes sense seeing as that's where all the major components lay. So as we strip away the layers of the shell and unscrew parts such as the power button, now would be a good time to mention that Zappit Games themselves did not design this console. The actual design was firmed out and then created by Ontario firm Nitric Limited, who were merely given a set of specifications to meet and then were allowed to go to town with the design as long as Zappit had the final say, of course. The idea was for the gamewave to be an easy-to-use family entertainment center, one that would not just function as a game console, but also as a cheap DVD-capable media machine. Anyways, despite how many screws there are, it's really easy to open up. The main thing to note when opening this thing up is that the internal components use a smaller screw size than that of the outside case. And finally, we're in. The only thing attached to the top part of the case still is the power button, and we can make quick work of that. Now, the first thing we'll see is the DVD drive and power supply, manufactured by Fuss at the Zhongde Electronic Factory in Shenzhen, China, and excuse me if I butchered any of that. This was actually the design team's second choice for a disk drive, since the Sanyo drive that the console was originally designed with got discontinued partway through development. The sticker on top of the drive here kindly warns us that there's invisible laser radiation when open and interlocks defeated, and that we should not look into the beam. Well, that sounds inviting. And by inviting, I mean it's inviting us to unscrew the drive and see what's underneath. Unfortunately, my disk drive seemed to only go so far before getting caught on something, and one of our major chips seems to be obscured. I know I could have pried a little more and whatnot, but honestly, as worthless as gamewave systems are, they're hard to find. I didn't want to replace this one. So this is as far as it's going for now. Apparently over 70,000 gamewave systems were sold, but there's no telling how many of that number include systems like mine that somehow ultimately ended up sitting in warehouses around North America for years. Besides, seeing as Zappit Games already had some shady things surrounding it, that number could be inflated. Anyways, this large chip in the center here is the heart of the machine, and that's a Mediamatics 8611 processor, a very uncommon chip for game consoles since it was aimed more at high quality video playback than for anything resembling actual gameplay. This can be seen by the Gamewave's games having some truly beautiful animations in them, but not a lot of gameplay intensive, well, game sections. Covered here but seeable in this picture I found while researching Zappit Games is the Altera Max 2 CPLD, which is a chip responsible for allowing the DVD drive and processor to work together. There are apparently some issues during development in getting the disk drive and Mediamatics processors to work together due to the disk drive here functioning differently than the originally intended Sanyo one. I don't know the exact details of the problem itself, but apparently said problem was so perplexing that a new loader had to be designed for the console, jointly developed by Altera, National Semiconductor, and Nitric Limited. Finally here we have two memory chips, provided by company ISSI. The Gamewave contains 2 MB of flash memory, along with 16 MB of SRAM. Also as part of this system is something powering it that I guess to some extent can be called an operating system, and that's National Semiconductor's Navigator, which is software that allows for games and DVDs to be booted, the console launch sequence itself to happen, and for open-close messages to be displayed. And really that's it. This is everything powering the system, and especially by 2005 standards, it is not impressive. There was only one known variant of the Gamewave hardware that made it out into the wild, and those were development kits that were jointly sold by Nitric Limited and Zappit Games. And those clearly didn't sell very well, seeing as the Gamewave had only one licensed title and 0 third-party games. But that's enough of that. Let's put the console back together and take some of these still sealed games out of their plastic wrap. I should mention, I don't usually collect sealed games, but the collector in me also doesn't like opening sealed retro games. But also, even though these games are hard to find, much like the console itself, they're virtually worthless and there's very little footage of them online. But then again, maybe the comment section is right, and these games will suddenly be worth a ton of money after having some Canada-based YouTuber do a weird video on them. But all snark aside, the games we're looking at today are as follows. We have 4 Degrees to Arc of Trivia Volume 1, Lock 5, 4 Degrees to Arc of Trivia Bible Edition, Rewind, Rewind 2006, which comes on 2 discs by the way, and Letters App. All new old stock, all in great condition, and all of these very nice fold out full color instruction pamphlets. Now I swear some of these logos just scream graphic design is my passion. Not featured here today are 4 Degrees to Arc of Trivia Volume 2, Click, yes with an exclamation mark in the name, Gems, Rewind 2005, Sudoku, Zap 21, and of course VeggieTales Veg Out Family Tournament. Apparently the rarest of these games is Gems, and as I found through a recent Twitter interaction, getting a complete set of Gamewave games can be quite difficult, even if such a feat could likely be done for under $100. With that said, I have no desire to do so, though if anyone knows where I can find that VeggieTales game, please hit me up. Now let's look at the games I have. Starting off here is Lock 5. After a 45-second long load screen and a pretty flashy intro, we can start playing this puzzle game in which, actually you know what, I think to include how to play a video can do it more justice than I can. This game, along with having a kind of confusing premise, will allow me to show off something I think is a pretty cool feature of all these games. Along with coming with instruction manuals, they actually all have these how to play videos. That's pretty cool.
In Lock 5, you collect numbers in an attempt to match the combinations listed on the scoreboard and score as many points as possible. At the beginning of each round, the cylinder at the top will fill with 5 random numbers between 1 and 6, and the same numbers will be given to each player. Players can then choose which of those numbers they want to keep by locking them in, using the number buttons on the remote. Once players have locked in their numbers, the top numbers will spin again, and any unlocked numbers below will be replaced with a new number. Players will then get one more chance to lock in new numbers before the third and final spin of the round. After the third spin, all of the numbers will automatically lock into place.
Anyways, I think you get the point. I've watched this clip several times, and I still have no idea of much of what's going on here. With that said, the fact that this game was sold at $25 for a home console is, well, kind of shocking. There's just not a lot here at all. Not only am I not sure of what's going on, but literally this mode is all we have here. And also I should mention, when they say this game is for up to 4 players, they should really say 2 to 4 players, because of all of the games we're looking at today, none of them have a single player mode. I guess when they say family entertainment system, they mean in the sense of you should play these with your family, since you obviously can't play them alone. So okay, Lock 5 is kind of a bust, but how about the pack-in game, 4 Degrees, the Arc of Trivia? We're actually going to lump both versions of this game that I own in together, so we're going to be looking at both the pack-in version, 4 Degrees Volume 1, and a later released 4 Degrees Bible Edition, which was a title made as part of a push to hopefully reach evangelicals in the United States. Actually, before we go on, can we talk about how many variants there are in this game library? Sure, there are 13 gamewave games, but 3 of those are variants of 4 Degrees and 3 are variants of Rewind. So technically speaking, there are only 9 original games for the gamewave. 4 Degrees though was one that Zappit was clearly very proud of, as not only were there 3 different versions of it for the gamewave, but it later got a cell phone port in 2008 or so, making it Zappit's only mobile title. 4 Degrees in both of the versions I own is a simple trivia game. You and your fellow players have a wheel with various types of questions on it, and each take turns in selecting a category. You then press the corresponding button on your controller to make your pick. You get hints and have answers eliminated as the timer counts down, but for the most points, you need to answer correctly as fast as possible. It's a simple trivia game, but like anything remotely similar to Trivial Pursuit, it's actually really fun with friends. By the way, all the footage you're seeing right now was recorded solo, which I know, boring, but I did later go through and play some of these with Elliot, my fiance. As weird and dumb as it sounds that none of these games have a single player mode, most of them are actually quite fun with friends in kind of that board game kind of way, and that includes 4 Degrees Volume 1 here. As for 4 Degrees Bible Edition, it's more of the same but Bible themed. Now, as I spent a huge chunk of my childhood deep in the American South, you'd think I'd actually be great at this. But also, as you'd expect seeing as I'm Jewish, the only questions I could actually consistently get right here involve the Old Testament. So next up we have Rewind and Rewind 2006. These games are apparently originally planned to be used in trivia-based gamewave systems that be used in restaurants, or so I've heard, but that never panned out. That said, these are more modern trivia themed, with Rewind 2006 in particular containing trivia specific to, well, 2005 and 2006. After inputting your name, which is a staple of every gamewave game I played, like seriously, these all use the same name input screen, you then are given a variety of mini categories where you have to answer questions. It's another simple trivia game, this though it has a couple of game modes. Honestly, it's not bad, but also of the 5 games we've looked at so far, 4 have been trivia games, and if that's not telling you about the system, I don't know what is. Then again, even those who worked on it that I interviewed admitted that the gamewave was essentially just a DVD player capable of some basic processing. Now before we move on, you're probably wondering what's on the second disc of Rewind 2006. Well, it's just more questions. They didn't even give it a new UI or anything. So yeah, I wonder why they couldn't fit this all on the same disc. The next game here is Letter Zap, and honestly this is my favorite game. Well, favorite gamewave game anyways. I know that doesn't sound like much as Lock 5 is one of the worst things I've ever played, but trust me, it's fun. In this game, you're given a board where you have to assemble as many words as you can from the randomly generated set of letters to earn as many points as possible to beat your opponents. There's also another mode called Letter Zap Tag, where you actually compete with your friends to assemble as many words as possible from a massive board. Both modes are fun, both are simple. Yes, both has about as much gameplay as my DVD copy of the Mega Man cartoon series, but with friends this can get fast and frantic, and I'd be lying if I said that I didn't have a lot of fun playing this one. And now we have the final game we're going to show off here, and let's take a look at Super Mario Bros. Okay, it's not a game, it's the movie, the live action one, on DVD. It's horrible, and not technically a gamewave game, but it makes me wonder if, through some sort of technical wizardry, if Super Mario Bros., the original game, could be ported to the gamewave. So with that, that's it for today's Teardown showcase of the gamewave. It was something different than a buying guide or a documentary, but I hope it was a great way to celebrate Canada Day, and who knows, if you enjoyed this, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll do some similar vids in the future, or even go so far as to restore some old consoles and show you my process. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to Stuff We Play, and maybe join great folks such as the Golden Bolt and Justin Chipman over on Patreon if you feel so inclined, because trust me, the support is very much so appreciated. Now, instead of doing my usual end of video spiel, I'm going to leave you with something pretty cool. Since I've mentioned it so many times, here's the full trailer for VeggieTales Veg Out Family Tournament. There's no speaking or anything, but it at least shows the game off enough so you can get an idea of it. One last fun fact, by the way, as far as I know, this is the only gamewave game to have ever gotten a dedicated trailer. Yikes.